Hey guys, this is Doug with fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. I'm doing a video right now about restoration of marriage. And this is not intended to be a video where we solve everything and fix everything, but more of a bridge to a more in-depth conversation. You need to understand that marriage is far, far more central to his plans than we realize. Certainly more than we talk about in the institutional church or home churches or pretty much anywhere that I've been or anybody that I know. You need to understand that so much of creation, so much of the way things are engineered is based on teams, on man and woman, on pairs. And this is a difficult thing to talk about, the really big spirals, because people will try to misunderstand, or some voice will whisper that they should misunderstand or something like that. But let me see if I can explain a different way. In the Hebrew tradition, a guy kind of gets a liking for a girl and he thinks, wow, she'd make a good wife, I want her. Maybe they kind of flirt through the lattice like Song of Solomon talks about, and they see each other from afar, and maybe their families kind of talk and think, yeah, this would be a good political, tribal, for whatever reason, this would be a good mix. Then the guy, the young man that wants to marry this girl, he would go to her father and he would negotiate a bride price. And he would say, okay, this is what I want, this is what I'm willing to give. This is the dowry I'm willing to pay for her. And the father, depending on how good a dad he is and how much he cares or whatever, he might already know that his daughter has a liking for this guy and that this is kind of, there's some little undertones here, and she's all kind of for it, and she's kind of standing in the background looking behind the curtain hoping dad goes for it and everything. And they've already talked about, what's your dad going to expect from me, and how many camels and how many cows and whatever to get this done. And so the groom to be talks to the father, and the father gives him the bride price. He agrees to the bride price, and the father says, okay. The father pours a cup of wine, gives it to the bride, gives it to the groom. They share a cup. That's it. Period. That's all there is. They're married. And they are betrothed. They are husband and wife. Now, they don't get to do anything. They don't get to be intimate, but it's more than engaged. They are husband and wife at that moment when her dad agrees to it. The only person that needs to be consulted, the only person that needs to have a say in it is her dad. Not even her. If she went off and just did it without her dad being involved, that would be very, very bad. Very bad. So, anyway, they're betrothed. They're husband and wife, but he doesn't get to touch her or anything like that. Then he leaves, and he goes to his father's house to prepare a place for her. And he'll build an addition onto their adobe stone whatever building, or he'll make another tent or whatever, depending on cultural and money, economic, whatever situations, and he'll prepare a place for her. Now, when his dad says, okay, the place is prepared, you can go get your bride now, because his dad's going to inspect it and give him advice and say, no, you're going to need a bigger bed, you're going to need a little more whatever, you need more flowers in here, whatever. When his dad says, okay, it's ready, and approves it, then he would go at a time and an hour nobody knows. Sorry. At a time or hour that nobody knows, whenever it's ready, as fast as he can, as soon as dad says, yeah, you're good, he's going to make a beeline back, get her, and all of her companions, whoever her handmaidens and whoever her friends are, and he goes and gets her, and they go back to the big party that's prepared at his house. Now, her parents typically wouldn't go. She's getting handed off. She belongs to this other family. And so her and all of her friends would go, hence some of the parables about the 10 virgins who weren't ready when the groom came. They didn't keep their lamp full, so they didn't get to go, and he didn't recognize them because they weren't with the wedding party. And anyway, so they go, they have a wedding feast, big party, everybody eats, might last for days. Then they get to go into their private chamber and be together. Now, when Jesus talks about he's going to prepare a place for us, and he talks about the church being the bride, we need to understand that this is the symbology that he's drawing on, and this is what he's trying to get us to understand, that he is betrothed, but can't yet consummate the marriage. She's not really his yet. She's not ready. The place isn't ready. But as soon as he saw the bride as she would be, the church as she would be, and he went to the church's father, which is God, Father God, and negotiated a bride price. It says, what is it going to cost me to have her? She's so beautiful. I must have her. And the father says, well, you're going to have to go to earth, live as a man, be mocked, beaten, scorned, whipped, shredded, die on a cross, take on the sins of the world, go to hell, preach the gospel, and then I'll give her to you. And he's like, great, let's go. However long that took for him to decide, I have no idea. But he agreed to the bride price. And the bride price was to personally take on the sins of the world, to spend all his treasure, to spend everything that he had, to give up deity, to give up everything, to give up heaven, to give up everything, to live on this mud ball, so as to show her his love and to pay the debt of mankind. It must be an awfully wonderful bride for him to be willing to pay that. Certainly much better than the mega churches and the sort of system that we put in place now. Anyway, so he comes through with his end of the deal, and he pays the price. And then he goes to the Father and he says, I'm going to prepare a place for you. Be ready for when I come. And everybody at that time understands he's talking about, he's the groom. And at a day or hour that's not known, they need to be ready to go. Because just like that, they're going to the bridal feast. And if they're not in that procession marching up to that house, to that feast, they're not going to be let in. And they need to be ready. And then there'll be a feast. And after the feast, he will have infinity to consummate that marriage with the bride, to spend time with her, to love her, every part of her, every piece, every cell of her, every individual like me, like you, that's part of the bride of Christ, will have an eternal amount of time to spend with him, intimately involved, loving, whatever. One day I'm looking up at the stars and Jesus says, aren't they pretty? And I said, yeah, they really are, Lord. And he said, you and I are going to have enough time to go explore every single one of those. I'm like, just you and me? I mean, we're going to go like field tripping, looking around at each of those and examining all the creation and just like fishing on this planet and sightseeing and yeah. You're going to do that with just me? He said, there's going to be time enough for me to do that with everybody. Okay, I don't think people get their head around that. Anyway, after the bridal feast, we have lots and lots and lots of time to be far more intimate with Jesus than we can get our head around. Together, because we are married to each other, because the bride is one body, one flesh. That means that if you're my brother, if you're my sister, then we're one. And that's just all there is to it. And we are married to each other because we are the bride, and the bride is married to Christ. And we need to start acting like it. And when we talk about restoring marriage, it has to start with the biggest possible spiral. And the biggest possible spiral is your marriage with Jesus. At the Last Supper, part of the symbology of the cup is that betrothal, that is the moment when the Father says, now pour the cup, drink it yourself, give it to the bride, in the form of those 12 apostles. And they drink it, and Jesus is betrothed to the bride. That is the Father saying, okay, we've reached a point of no return. I acknowledge that you've paid the price. You've done your ministry. This is on a unchangeable track now. I consider your debt paid. Share the cup. And they are betrothed. And Jesus is betrothed to the bride. And they are husband and wife. The new church. And that marriage is restored. What was lost, because he was married to Israel. But she wouldn't go. She wouldn't behave, and she wouldn't come along. She was rebellious. She was a whore. It says that she was such a bad prostitute that she had to pay other nations to have sex with her. That she bribed them to let her whore with them. And God said, I wrote her a bill of divorce and put her away. Now, the promises to the nation of Israel, God, she wouldn't go. She wouldn't go. And the only way to end that marriage was for somebody to die. So at least part of Jesus dying on the cross is to end that marriage. He's dead. He's no longer married to Israel. And he rises resurrected, and waiting for him is Mary Magdalene. That symbolic, broken, previously sinful, demonically oppressed example of the church that loves him desperately. What have you done with my Lord? Show me where he is. I will carry his body on my back if I have to. Just show me where he is. What have you done with him? And he says, it's me. But don't touch me. I haven't yet been to the Father. Everything in heaven is waiting. They got a party. They got a cake with candles. Everybody is excited to see the sinless, spotless Lamb of God come home after everything he's been through. And he has to stop because the cries of that woman make him stop dead in his tracks and wait, because she so desperately needs to see her Lord. That is the example of the bride. She is standing in the gap for the church. The new bride, after the marriage to Israel is dissolved, and he's married to the bride. Now, if you're Jewish, join the bride, and the promises that were made to you will be fulfilled. But the nation isn't part of the church. Individuals are part of the church. Just like the Southern Baptist Convention is not part of the bride. The Southern Baptist Convention is a construct. The people that may go to some Southern Baptist churches, some of them are part of the bride. Some of them are pew-sitting dead people. If you are, you are. You only you know. Ask the Lord. If we're going to restore marriage, if we're going to do something about the divorce rate in in the churches, so many of them aren't even Christian. I mean, we say 50, 51%, whatever, of Christian marriages end in divorce, but I figure 98% of the people that say they're Christian aren't actually Christian, so we don't really have that many divorces amongst the real Christians. The ones that heard God, that married who they were supposed to, that it's a God-centered, God-ordained, God-led, God-focused marriage, yeah, they're probably okay. Until the Lord says, like to Ezekiel, I'm going to kill your wife tonight, and it's an object lesson, and I don't want you to cry about it, and it's prophetically significant, and I know it's going to hurt, and I love you, son, but I'm going to end this marriage now. Well, he can do that. Well, God has joined together, let no man put us under. He hates divorce because that's us doing it. But he can divorce people anytime he wants. What God has put together, God can put us under anytime he wants. If your spouse drops dead, there's no way to look at it except that God just divorced you. Why? I don't know. Whatever his reasons are. Maybe he's got somebody else for you. Maybe it's time for a new partner. Maybe he wants you alone for a while. Maybe, I have no idea. But make no mistake, what he joins together, he can undo anytime he wants to. And there's plenty of biblical examples of him doing that. Even in Ezra chapter 9 and 10, people realize they married the wrong people and repent and put them away. Because they did the same thing that just got them in trouble the last time and got them sent into captivity, marrying wives God specifically told them not to marry. And those curses was going to start coming down on their head because they were out of order. Just because you go into a church and you raise your hand and you say, "So help me God," doesn't mean that God has to honor it. He's not obligated to bless whatever you want him to bless, especially if you did it in rebellion. And just because the state says this is a holy matrimony doesn't make it holy. If the state says you can marry that Rick and Steve can marry, that doesn't make it holy matrimony in the eyes of God. If the state says you can marry your dog, if the state says you can marry 2 or 3 people, that doesn't make it holy matrimony. You can call it a civil union if you want. You can call it whatever. I don't care what you call it. But it ain't holy matrimony. It ain't under God. It's just the world being the world. They can marry whoever they want. Marry a cow, marry a goat, I don't care. You're the world. You can do whatever you want. The world does what the world does. But if it's going to be Jesus, if it's going to be Christ-centered marriage, it better be under God. And it better have been his idea. And you better be marrying who he wanted you to marry. And if you don't, you better say you're sorry and beg and plead and ask him to fix it and somehow make it blessed, even though maybe it wasn't supposed to be in the beginning. And he'll have mercy and he'll turn and he'll probably fix it. He'll probably find a way. Maybe your marriage is in really big trouble. Maybe your marriage is so far gone you don't know how it's even possible it could be reconciled. Maybe you're miserable. Maybe you're getting abused. I don't know what the Lord has for you, but I know that he's faithful to replace anything that you give up for the gospel. That he's righteous and true, and that if you get your marriage with Jesus right, other stuff in your life is going to start falling into place. And it may not look the way you want. It probably won't look the way you thought it should. His ways are not our ways. But you've got to get your marriage to Jesus right first. I am the bride of Christ. I am married to Jesus. I understand that. And he says I'm a really good Proverbs 31 woman. That I rise early, that my family's clothed, that I make sure they get fed, that I make good deals with money, that I can be trusted so that he can go do whatever he wants to do. And I'm grateful that he would call me a good Proverbs 31 woman. Because unless I am that to Jesus, I can't expect my wife to be that to me. They won't go where you won't lead them. And men, if you want your wife to adore you, if you want her to submit to you, well, then you better get about adoring and submitting to Jesus. And then she'll sit at your feet, not because you have a thing between your legs and she has to. She'll sit at your feet and go, that guy submits to Jesus better than anybody I ever saw. I want to see how he does that. I want to learn from him. I understand that he's closer to God than I am, and I want to know how he did it. I don't want my wife to obey me because I have a penis. God is not interested in the sack of skin that you're in. He's not a respecter of persons. To say that he's obsessed with your sack of flesh means that he is in fact a respecter of persons, that the flesh matters more than the spirit, and that can't be. So I understand that if my wife speaks and rebukes me for something and it's Jesus, then I hang my head and say, yes, Lord, and I do whatever she told me to do. Because I'm not submitting to her, I'm submitting to Jesus, and he's the one that wears the pants in this family. He's my husband. And if my husband comes out of her mouth, then I'm going to submit. And if Jesus comes out of my mouth, she should submit. If Doug comes out of my mouth, if my yellow stuff, if my flesh comes out of my mouth, yeah, she don't need to listen to that at all. I'm not expecting her to obey me. I want her to obey Jesus. I'm just betting that Jesus is going to come out of my mouth more times than not. And if that's not the case, then I need to do something to get closer to him so that she'll have somebody to lead the way. Because they won't go where you won't lead them. And if you're not a man of God, if you're not the head of the house, if you're not closer to Jesus than she is, who's she going to learn from? Who's going to help her grow? There is an order of things. But to me, it's real simple. The head of the house, the spiritual head of the family, is whoever's got the biggest cup of Jesus. Whoever is most reliably hearing God and obeying and walking in his ways. And unfortunately, a whole lot of sisters in my life have been there for me when the men weren't. They were busy doing something else. She was the one close to God. She was the one hearing. She was the one having dreams and visions and accurately speaking the word of the Lord. And it wasn't supposed to be that way. And if they're godly women, they didn't want it that way. They wanted him to be out front, and they didn't know how to get him to stop looking at porn, to stop being obsessed with his job, to stop worrying about other things, to stop playing rock music in an 80s cover band, and get about being the man of God they're supposed to be. They were called to be. And I've seen a whole bunch of marriages restored that people don't make videos about, because this ain't about tooting my horn. This ain't about defending myself. But I've seen a whole lot of marriages restored when I just simply said to the wife, when you go to bed at night, put your hand on his shoulder and say, Lord, whatever you gave me, give it to him. Even if I never get it back. And push real hard. Every good thing that's in you that came from Jesus, just ask the Lord to give it to your husband. That he would be the head, that he would be strong, that he would hear, that he'd be the defender spiritually, that he's supposed to be, that he would walk in what he's called to walk in. And wouldn't you know, they quit playing rock music in their 80s covers band. They start playing Christian music on Sunday morning. They start seeing demons, doing warfare, defending the family, hearing God, having dreams and visions, and becoming the head that they're supposed to be. And you know who you are. Yeah, I'm talking about you. And I got to see marriage after marriage beautifully restored when they just start praying for each other, saying, Lord, give her whatever I got that's good, make her strong. And she's praying, Lord, give him whatever I got and make him strong. Sacrificially laying down everything for the other person. That's love. And spiritually, that's going to bond them more than physicality, more than having kids together, more than money, more than anything. And it will bring restoration. And it's beautiful. There's a lot more to say on this. And I can tell you that I am speaking from experience. God is faithful to restore what you give up for the gospel. And it will be so far beyond anything you can think or imagine. And if he tells you to give something up, give it up. Give it up happily. Give it up willingly. Give it up cheerfully. Rejoice in affliction. Rejoice in persecution. And watch and see what he does. And it will be glorious. I ask the Lord would just cement whatever in this video into your heart that was from him, that was what you needed to hear, that the enemy wouldn't steal it, that he would free your mind, that the fear, the anger, the unforgiveness would fall away, that he would speak peace to your heart, and that he would bring restoration into your life and your relationships in whatever way he intends to do that. He is a mighty, mighty God. And his ways are not our ways. And it'd be good if we stopped trying to put him in a box and telling him he had to endorse whatever our plans are. Thanks for listening. More of this on the website, fellowshipofthemartyrs.com. We'll have some more conversations about this. I pray that your marriage to Jesus would be glorious, real, fruitful, powerful, unstoppable, undeniable, visible to everyone around. First and foremost, you've got to get that right. That's all for now. Thanks for listening.